It's two conscious guys talking, where conscious male leaders come together and have a discussion that is deep, that is nourishing, that allows us to see the illumination of consciousness that's unfolding progressively for men that are waking up in the world, and where you can get insights on your own awakening as a man, and also for amazing women that want to learn more about men's challenges and struggles that have created some of the dysfunction we've seen within men in its society, often called, quote unquote, the patriarchy and other terms. What created it? What is the genesis of it all? What can we do about it today to empower men to be all that they're meant to be and to support the awakening of consciousness for men and women and all? All right, Justin, great to be with you today.
Great to be with you too, Daniel.
It says metal on your hat, and then it's got the periods afterwards. So does that stand for something?
Well, unlike maybe on first glance, it does not stand for metal. Though I think it also applies with me, but I'm more rock and roll than metal. But no, this hat, quite fitting for our dialogue today, is actually the name of a very large international men's organization that I'm a member of. And the metal, the acronym, or as you would say, stands for musician, entertainment, technology, artistry, leadership. And so this is a international men's group of over 1,000 men all around the world. And it used to be a smaller in-person gig in Los Angeles. And in 2020, when everything changed and Zoom became the way as we are today, metal went online and picked up members all over the world, all over this country, and developed from just a weekly get together for lunch with guest speakers. And they used to have really big speakers come in. They went to a every Saturday morning event with really top speakers, authors, people that were great guests. And then throughout the week, there's so many different shows or calls, of whatever you want to call it, from, investment to real estate, to musicians, to the entertainment industry, to support groups, and all kinds of things in between. And you get to really have great brotherhood, camaraderie, networking, and support with other men, which is really cool. And I think extremely important for men to find that brotherhood with men. And the kind of the saying of this group is heart-centered men is sort of the qualification, heart-centered guys who want to grow together, network together, become brotherhood, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the groups that I do almost every day is at 7:30 in the morning. I did it this morning, and we call it the Wim Hof breathwork group, where we do a half hour of Wim Hof, intense breaths with the breath holds, and some meditation and some shares and stuff. And so it's kind of a great way to anchor in the morning, get up and do this really intense breathing, which I think really fires the body up and gets you on the right track for the day. And I notice when I do breath work, my days are usually more invigorating than when I skip them. That extra 30 minutes to 60 minutes of sleep is nice, but if you can get up and really dive into that breath work and that intensity, which I start with that, and then I do either before or after that, I'll go into my Buddhist chanting as well. So I anchor my morning with the breath work and with the more spiritual chanting, so that I can really get, my feet underneath me. I think having a good practice, whether it's that or something similar, or however works for each individual, we're all built differently, obviously. For me, that's my anchor in the morning, and then I go into my writing session, followed by my workout and exercise. And my days are so all over the place. It's crazy because I do so many different things in the art field and in my different work in my companies, and my days can be so unpredictable and so all over the place. And I'm not a routine guy, but having that morning routine really anchored really at least gives me the foundation from which to begin. And I'm like such a big proponent of all human beings finding something, whatever works for them. I believe if you can do something that'll tap into some sort of spiritual and mental work, and if you can do something that taps into emotion or something to get flow going, you find your own groove. But I think it's a really great way to start, because a lot of times jump out of bed, or not even jump out of bed, but like the first thing people do is just lean over and grab their their iPhone or whatever and start looking at social media or news. I'm like, holy God, you can't, for me, I can't start the day with the bombardment of bad stuff going on in the world. It's like, I don't even have my legs yet. And, you know, I'm getting hit with bad news. It's like, now I just want to pull the covers over my head and call it a day.
Right.
You know, it's like, if you get yourself really centered and you're strong in your base, then when you do start checking emails and tapping into the more material existence of our day, you will, you know, lean in. And when something comes across the table, that's maybe a bad email from a client, or a piece of political news you may not agree with, or something happening, whatever in the world, you can take it in a little more stride, I think. This
Totally.
is my personal journey, and we're all different. But if you're asking me what I do, that's a really important part for me to get my day going.
Yeah, and I just keep thinking, I did mention this to you already before we got on. I just interviewed another person who's big creative and a Tony Award winner and everything. And he said something similar to what you just said. That's funny, like two in a row, like people saying similar things. He's like, I need structure. I need to start my day with this exactly, these things that he does, breath work, this and that is actually kind of similar,
Yeah,
that part of it. But
good.
so yeah, and me too. I'm the same way. Uh, I'm just a disciplined type of person overall. I'm definitely spontaneous too. So I'm probably similar in that regard to you in that, just in general. But yeah, I have to have some sort of a routine or I just won't feel right. I won't feel right. If I don't get up and meditate, if I don't go out and do the walk, if I don't, this morning something came up and because I wasn't fully committed like I normally am this morning to just doing everything in an exact order. I was like, oh, I'll just do this. And it, yeah, threw everything off temporarily in the morning. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't even done my walk. I haven't done this and that. And it's like, I'm like, I have to walk. Because your mind can take over. No, you can't do the walk now. You need to do this. I'm like, yeah, screw it. I go for the walk. I need to take that walk. And
Yeah.
you take the walk, and what that does for you. And, you have your other practices, whatever we do is try to structure it throughout the day. Okay, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do that, the yoga thing to get my posture better. I'm like, sometimes with this mic, I'm leaning over too much. I need to work on that more, but it's like, yeah, my posture is whack. It's like, okay, you need to start doing those exercises for your posture again. So let's get that going, that practice going, and just whatever all the practices that we need. Went to the gym last night, right? Like all the things, just keep dialing it, which I'm typically really good at, just being very consistent. Funny, just you slip once and it's like, yeah, that's no good. Now you see like why you got it so dialed in.
Yeah.
But it throws you off, right?
Yeah. Now there is an interesting trap here though that you have to look out for. And I think you're kind of leading with this a little bit,
Yes.
because there are days when things come up.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
There is a day where maybe you slept your alarm, or where you have an early call for some kind of a gig. My entertainment industry, sometimes there's an early shoot, or there's things that come up, or you have an emergency with a family member or one of your pets, or things happen, right? And so I think we have to also, again, as I say we, but I'm speaking me, and you all can decide for what's for you, but to have some pliability in that, knowing that if something comes up and you can't do all the things that you normally do and that you trust and rely on doing, know that you can still do some things, and it's not going to, ruin your day. If you're in the mindset like, oh, I can't, if I don't do A, B, C, and D, my day is screwed. And it's like, but then what happens if something comes up and you don't do them? Are you just going to live under the story that your day is screwed?
Right.
It's like, well, okay, then you have to practice that sort of self-forgiveness and say, okay, I don't have an hour to do my things today, so I have 15 minutes. What can I do?
Yeah.
Or can I simplify it? And can I just breathe for 2 minutes? Can I chant for 2 minutes? Can I jot a few notes down? How can I adjust and be more flexible? Because ultimately, if we're too rigid, that's when things can break too. I mean, that's just like if you're getting in a car accident and you tense up, you're more likely to get injured. It's like you want to still be in flow, like Bruce Lee says, flow like water. You gotta still be able to do that,
Yeah.
while anchoring yourself in. So it can be a trap. You just have to look out for that. But yes, at the end of it though, having a practice that has that, especially if you have a life and a career that isn't so structured. You don't clock in the same time and clock out the same time at the job every day, and things aren't
Right.
identical. So I think that's
Right.
great. Yeah. But
Right. Right. Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, bringing up Bruce Lee, wow, that's a big thing we could get into right there. But yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, talk about a disciplined person, and he seemed to be extraordinarily disciplined.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the same time, with that principle underneath, with the water, be like water, that
Mhm.
whole thing. And yeah, I think Bruce Lee for a lot of conscious guys, a lot of guys anyway, he's very fascinating, right? His consciousness and the way he approached things and wanted to be. I also think like some of those aspects. I know like it was there's different rumors about what killed him, but like I kind of felt like it was his pushing. Like he was almost pushed it too far. Like
Mhm.
he's like I got be the absolute best and even beyond, and it just seemed like it almost seems like it was almost too much, like, but yet it was his path, right? It was his life. And look at what he did, what the impact is, right? So it's so interesting. The mind could evaluate that was wrong or this was right, or, in our own daily lives, much less in someone's total life.
Mhm.
I think it's pretty interesting the way we evaluate things. I notice my mind having judgments about things all the time. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, so do I want to go with that judgment or do we not want to? And usually
Right.
it's always a no. Like,
Yeah.
nope, don't want to go with that judgment. Let's move
Yeah.
on.
You know, and many of our great inspirational leaders over time, like the Gandhis of the world, have had major also character flaws, things that
Mm,
you would judge them for and be like, this person's terrible. They've done
right.
something that really bad in their domestic situation, or they've made some certain questionable decisions in their life. And you can say, oh well, that one thing or that time they did that, I'm going to judge their whole package by that. But we're all human beings in this experience, and no one is 100% perfect. That's not achievable or attainable,
Mm,
right? So there's always something that's going to come up. I mean, it's fortunately and unfortunately part of the truth, I think. Even the great artists that inspire us, like Jimi Hendrix, one of my favorites of all time, and the guy had so many demons with his abuse problems, and 27 years old, like I mean, he looked like he was older than that before he died. I don't think of him as being like a 20-something year old kid, right?
mm,
With the body of work that he did and the amount of things and the way he inspired musicians for 60 plus years now, or whatever it's been. um but he had his thing too. So I think we all have flaws in our character. We all have troubles. We all have situations. That's part of the human experience, and it's a matter of how do we continue to navigate those to continue to show up in our best selves every day, on in spite of those few things that could be judged by others, because you'll always find something to judge someone on if you look for it.
right. Yeah, I think, when talking about one of the things we want to talk about, of course, is mental health today. And we were talking about food earlier, and I was noting, you're eating a little bit before we got on. We know each other a little bit. You'd probably feel a little even little. You're a comfortable person overall. I gather anyway, but you feel a little more comfortable, probably like, oh, whatever. He doesn't mind if I'm eating. But then we got on a conversation about how you eat and everything, and we were talking about that. And I'm always fascinated. I listen to tons of videos about nutrition and what everybody's thinking and researching what they believe and what you should be doing. Just because I'm just fascinated by all the ideas, and it's just cool. And then maybe something resonates to me. Oh, okay, maybe I will. Like less than 1% of the time, but like every once in a while, and it's just fun to listen to these conversations about it. And so you got all the different ideas. We talk about like diet, we talk about like how you should be overall as a man or whatever. We'll get into that, but diet has a huge effect on our mental health, right? I mean, for me, yeah, if I was just eating crap all day, like, that was my diet, yeah, I would be depressed, I would be anxious, no doubt about it. I have no question. I would have poor mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't do that right now. Like I do like a cacao drink to start the day. I have a lunch, I am a meat eater, but I do a lot with fish, which I believe is healthier for you. And I'm pretty sure that's true. I have salmon with a bunch of salad I create, and whatever different things that I do. Dinner is more suspect, quite frankly. Sometimes it's healthier, sometimes it's not. and I'm just at peace with it, and I know I can, if I want to improve it, all those ideas, I get it better, and all this stuff I could, but I know how I work with my food. I know like what I like to do with my food and what tends to seem to be supporting me better, at least. It may not be optimal, I don't know, or maybe I could make it better. But I also know if I'm too rigid and just, no, you eat that shit whether you want it or not, no matter what. And like I've tried those things before, and I could even last a year on it. And then so at some point it's like, I feel like I'm in a prison. There's no way I'm going to stay with this. Right. So it's just like, no, I'm not doing that. And I just make micro changes, right? And just keep tuning in, like, well, what do you really want? What feels right? How's your energy? Like you were mentioning earlier today, like just like looking at what's going to help set us up so that we can have stronger mental health as men, right? So for me, what I'm doing right now is working. Like I've really dialed it in recently. Used to be when I would travel, like I put on weight. I'm traveling. You eat sloppier, you get bigger portions if you go out to eat, right? Oh, but I came back and I was about the same, basically, which is a win for me. I'm like, shit, that's perfect. I mean, I don't want to be putting on all this weight. And I think just in the intentions of things are so powerful, right? And so I could go on, but you know how us guys are, we get to rambling on about all this stuff. So Justin, I mean, what have you discovered? Because I know you've had a big path with your health and mental health as well, like so many of the guys that are listening. What have you noticed? Something that isn't something we talk about a lot. So let's talk about diet a little bit today. What have you noticed with your diet and your mental health and your state?
Yeah, that's a huge question and a really important topic, right? Well, like we were discussing with our morning routine, there has to be some flexibility too. And like you were saying, like, I'm going to commit to this, and there's no missing, no messing up, right? But now you're putting such rigidity, if that's even a word, around your way of eating that sometimes you can start to resent it. And then if you just crack one day and then you go off the deep end and just eat a whole bunch of crap, and then you feel horrible. So I think you find a good flow and something that you can maintain and keep consistent that works for you. And then, when you do decide, I'm gonna go out to a restaurant, take my wife out on a dinner date or something, and you can have a little dessert or eat something a little different, not so worry about, how many, grams of saturated fats and are there any omega-6 seed oils in this, and, all the things that we're all looking out for now. It's like, yeah, there probably is all that stuff in there, but like your body is strong and resilient, and you can have a meal here and there that isn't your perfect drawn perfected diet, as long as 90% of the rest of what you consume is in line with that. And so I think it's very important to stay in that sort of flow and be like, yeah, we exist in this real world, right? So let's do that. But ultimately, my opinion is that the only person that knows what's best for us as far as our diet and whatnot is us, is our bodies. Our bodies are full of information, and a lot of times I feel that, and especially in the world of men, because we tend to, I feel, stay a little out of, there's a little bit of a fear, a little bit of a breakdown in our communication with ourselves, our feelings, emotions, our inwardness. And maybe there's like this cool guy persona, like, oh, I don't need to tap into my emotions, or, but really, like, the more we tap in and let our body ask the questions to our body, and there are ways, I mean, you can ask and listen for the answer if you're attuned to it. There's, different types of kinesiology, muscle testing you can do. There's obviously, allergy testing. You can do medical testing. There's all kinds of ways that you can get information about your body and get some information that might help you find where maybe you're deficient in certain nutrients and need to do certain more things. But ultimately, it's trial and error, and it's seeing what feels good. I've maintained a fairly healthy way of eating for most of my adult life, just because I've just been conscious of wanting to feel good, look good, and I've been a very active workout fitness enthusiast, and eat a good diet, but have my splurges, because that's just part of the human thing too. But 2011 was an interesting transition. My wife and I together decided that we were going to switch to an all plant-based diet. Now, a couple of years ago, I lost her back to the dark side. I joke with her, but she felt within her own body that she was deficient in iron and some other important nutrients, and felt like she was getting very sluggish and putting on weight, and that consuming more animal protein might have been the best thing for her. So even though at first I was like, because it's nice when you and your partner are doing the same thing, and now we're eating separate things at all our meals. But it was right for her, and so her truth is her truth, and I'll always respect that. Just like, as a plant-based person, if you will, I never judge anybody for their choice in eating meat or whatever. It's like, you got to follow your truth, and everyone's truth is true. It's right. I feel this, you feel that, we're both right. Yay, we can discuss our thoughts around it, but our truth is true for us, and that's all that really counts. But what I will say is that, and I've watched people who have no sort of discipline or idea. It's like they're hungry and they just grab whatever tastes good and just shove it down their mouth until they're not hungry anymore. And we end up eating really out of balance that way. We're not eating enough of the right amounts of things, and we're just eating whatever there is. And a lot of times it's fast food. It's, but we're on the go, drive-throughs and things like that. But we're not getting nutrients. We're not feeding our body what it's asking for. We're giving it too much sugar, too much processed stuff, too much omega-6 seed oils, things that create inflammation. And this can have a ripple effect in many ways. And we talk about mental health. Well, yes, the food itself can lead to depressive thoughts. If you're consuming a ton of sugar and stuff, and you're not getting a nice balance of food, then you have these they're literally chemical spikes and crashes. And you got a big dopamine spike, and you're like, and then all of a sudden, an hour later, it drops. And if you're susceptible to more depressive feelings, like, you're going to drop with it, and you're going to find yourself falling into a funk. Like, why do I feel so down right now? Well, it's just because you spiked your body with dopamine, and then it dropped, and now you're like, what do I do? You can't replenish it fast enough. So that's one area. And there are certain foods that are known to improve mood and things like that. There's a book I read a while ago called The Depression Cure, which is all these steps around how to do things to overcome depression without taking the typical pharmaceuticals, SSRI, NRIs, all the different
SSRIs, yeah.
all the receptive uptake inhibitors, however you say all those letters and words. But things from your diet, from drinking clean water to having adequate sunlight and vitamin D, then there's a lot of those things really play into it. But in addition, if your body is feeling good, and you're mobile and you're athletic and you're flexible and you're working out and you're eating well, you will naturally just feel better because your body is just more alive. You can jump up and do something, no problem. You're not going to get out of breath walking up a flight of stairs. You can go on a hike. You can go into nature. You can do so many other things if your body is reared up and ready to go. Furthermore, and it's somewhat materialistic, but also not, is that when you're eating well and taking care of yourself, and you look better, you just do. Your body, you're leaner, your clothes look nicer. And while we shouldn't judge, like, our physical appearance, that's not what I'm trying to get at. But when we feel better and our bodies are tuned up and look better, we naturally feel better just about ourselves walking through the world. It's just how it is. Men and women have way different ways of how they navigate the world as far as body image, but the self-consciousness and body dysmorphia and other things like that exists just as much in men, I think, as women. We just don't talk about it as much. I spent a long time thinking that I've suffered from it. Working out, no matter how much I work out and get lean and my abs are showing and stuff, like when I was a little kid and like 12, 13 years old, I had my growth had kind of stopped, and I just started putting on size, and I was a chubby kid, and I was getting made fun of for being a fat kid. And, it really, during that really formative years, 12, 13 years old, getting made fun of and just be embarrassed to take my shirt off. Back in the day, I don't think they allow this anymore, but when we used to play like sports in school and camp, and we had two teams, there was always shirts and skins.
Yeah.
I don't think they allow this anymore, but one team had to take their shirts off so that we didn't have jerseys. And so like I'd be at camp and I'd end up on the skins team. And I'd be like, I don't want to take my shirt. Like, I'd be embarrassed. And that stuck with me. And to the point where I've looked in the mirror and still at times have seen the little fat boy again. Like I know that's not me, but it exists. And so we have to honor that, and we have to be okay with saying, hey, this type of stuff exists in men, it exists in women. And the less we deny and the more we lean into it, the more we can overcome that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point you brought up. There's so much to cover, right? So, but yeah, I mean, with the body stuff, I think that is like another area of possible issues with mental health that men have. Because yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not. It's always this idea of, the biggest muscular guy is the king or whatever kind of vibe, right? So for me, I was on a leaner side, skinnier side, and whatnot. Wasn't, I was kind of the opposite maybe of where you were at, but not. I would be seen also as a lightweight to people that don't know me. They'd be like, "Well, you're not strong. I know. Just look at you. You're not that strong, right? Maybe a little athletic, but you don't look like much." But then, but I have a lot of natural just strength, just in general, like a lot of power comes through me energetically. And then I just got committed. Like, I'm really weak in my chest. So I was just like, all right, that's it. I'm going to be bench pressing. I'm going to be going, we do those crazy sets where we do like 6 sets, but like every single one you're doing drops, you're doing the drops and you're doing negative reps. And like, and unless if your chest isn't like ripped open by the time you're done, you didn't do enough. Like, those kind of sessions, and we would do them again and again and again. Sometimes even we're still like very sore, right? And like just not even smart sometimes. And through all that, I did end up, for my weight, being one of the stronger kids in the school at that time anyway. And all these kids are on all kinds of supplements and everything else, but so nobody be impressed with a bench press. But at the time it was higher, and because I devoted myself to it. And part of it was like, now if I get in a fight, I want to make sure I'm not studying tons of martial arts, but I make sure I'm strong enough. No one's gonna screw with me, right? So you got all that too, with like your body and your strength, and we think about this, some guys till the day they die, but especially earlier in your life and even midlife guys tend to go nowadays to do the MMA and everything. And, I've done some of that stuff a little bit. And it's like, we got to be prepared. We got to be strong enough. And are you capable enough? You're going to get your ass whipped and, or whatever. You better be ready. And I'm coming for your lunch tomorrow, Justin. Like, you better be ready. It's that kind of.
Yeah, Daniel, the school bully. I see it right now.
Right. You go get all those lunches. Right? But yeah, all that bullying and stuff. And so that was part of it, like you said, like with your body type, or just how you're perceived. In my case, the way I was perceived, oh, you must be weak. I'm like, no, I'm so strong, like I'm afraid to even show it. Like, I wouldn't want to hurt you, like I literally believe that. Now some people are like, you're full of shit, you'll get your ass whipped. Yeah, in some cases, if the guy's tough and big enough, yeah, okay, I'll give you that. But way more, after tussling with some of these guys that are really big, like how the hell are you that strong? I'm like, I don't know, I'm just kind of crazy strong, and at my core. And so, but nobody would see it. And that's always like drove me nuts as a mental health thing too. Like, oh, they don't know us. And then I just got over it at some point within the last few years, even. It took me like that long. And like, I don't care if anybody knows or not, whatever. I mean, and so I'm not concerned about it anymore. But I know what you mean. Like, I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh, you're still way too fat, in my opinion, right? I never got the 6-pack, but at some point too, I just got over it. I'm like, you know what? That's more vanity than I probably totally need. I guess they always say it's better to be leaner, but what do I know? I mean, do I feel good? I can get leaner if I want, but out of ego, forget about it. That's where I'm at with that stuff.
I think there's a theme that really runs through both of our stories, and I think many men especially will resonate with this.
Yeah.
And that's this not enoughness feeling.
Yes.
Like no matter what, and this leads to the mental health too, I'm not lean enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not handsome enough. I don't have enough money, enough women, enough. And we get into this trap of enoughness. And I'm so guilty of experiencing this, especially in my younger years, always. And then the comparison, the death spiral of comparison. that guy's, better looking and bigger and stronger and wealthier. And then you start to like move yourself down in your own importance and your own value. And then hello depression, and then it's worthiness and all those factors. So I think as men specifically, because a lot is to do with our status and how we show up in the world, that so many men don't feel like we're enough in whatever area that is. And when we are really rooted in there, especially if we're playing the comparison game, it'll really affect how we navigate the world in every day. I mean, wake up and do whatever you want to do to start your morning, as we discussed. But if you still feel like you're not enough, then the rest of the day is going to fall apart at some point, because we're living in this trap. And I've so been there, so I really understand this feeling. And a lot of it also is that the worthiness. Am I worthy? Like, I think we don't admit it as much, but there's this worth factor that really comes to play a lot. Am I worthy of this job or this money or this woman or this life or this thing? And I think a lot of us want it, but deep down don't feel we deserve it. And that I think stops a lot of us in our tracks of having the life we want to have. And it's an easy trap to fall into, and then you got to recognize it and get your ass out of it, is what the deal is. So
Yeah, now you've done some things that are, people will be like, wow, you've done all that, you've done a number of things, produced things that have been on TV, etc. I'll let you explain more about it if you want, but like,
yeah.
been doing all these things. You've had a big thing with cancer, and just incredible, with the journey you had with that, and how scary and crazy that was. But
Mm-hmm.
you can tell people about that if you want. But first, I'm just curious, like, um, did you have those aspirations like early in life? How did you have, being like you're the overweight, kid that's being made fun of and whatnot, did that in part spark this desire to be like, yeah, I'll show these motherfuckers, like, or something like that, what what I can do and things like that. So I'm curious about like your mental health journey and how that may have like especially what you said about like the overweight kid type of thing, like, and how that and the bullies, like how that may have motivated you to do some of the things you've done. I'm curious about that.
Yeah. Lot of interesting openers there, and I'd love
Yes.
to touch into some of them.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, one area that, and I can speak this with some bit of confidence, but I do believe that a lot of us are sort of more predisposed to depression. I think that our chemical wise, we can do a lot more than we give ourselves credit for, but I think that it does exist, and some of us have to work a little bit harder. And for me, depression and anxiety have been present in my life for as long as I can remember. Trouble sleeping at night ever since I was 11, 12 years old, and just having those general feelings that would kind of come and go as a really real thing. And the idea is to get out of it and course correct without beating yourself up too much. Yeah, the bullying is not easy on anybody. And the interesting thing about being the recipient of bullying is that sometimes it does inspire you to kick ass later, right? Now, like I was like I said, I was chubby when I was a kid, but by the time I started high school, I had lost all the weight. I went away to overnight camp and was really athletic, and I was eating better. And by the time I started high school, I was thin. And so that was no longer an issue of the weight, but the self-worth was still an issue. I was also very short. Like, I kind of, my growth spurt kind of slowed, and I was just one of the smaller kids. And so, yeah, I would get bullied, and I was an easy target. And what I realized later in life is that the biggest bully I had was actually me, because I didn't, I put myself down first. And I put myself in this low worthy space where I was susceptible to others picking up on my own energy, and I was an easy target, and I didn't make it easy for myself. And so going through that experience, yeah, there is some elements that will fire you up to be, get bigger and stronger and more successful and stuff like that. So that just does lie underneath. But in general, I just wanted to live a life and enjoy myself. By the time I got to college, I kind of shook all that, and and I just pursued making friends and having fun and being an artist. I was an artist already, and before that, a musician mostly. And through college, I kept playing drums and started working, directing TV, film, and acting, and doing all of that, and got my degree in communications and theater and everything. Started working in the field as a filmmaker, an actor, a professional musician. So I've been in the performing, creative storytelling space for my entire professional career and beyond. And that's been a huge blessing. And I've been able to transmute things that I've gone through into my art, the music I wrote, or a film I'm really proud of that I wrote. And we released it in early 2016 called Welcome to Where You've Always Been. It's a short film. It's available on Amazon. And it's a movie I wrote, starred in, directed, and edited. So I wore a few hats for that. And it's about a spoken word artist who suffers from depression and the inability to see his worth around him, despite how successful he is. And his life becomes so overwhelming that he becomes suicidal. Excuse me. So, making art with a message has always driven my purpose. And that film was certainly in line with that. And after 22 festivals and 5 awards and a nice little run, we were getting ready to keep making the art. At the same time, I had been, again, plant-based since 2011 and working out and feeling really good. And that spring of 2017, excuse me, I joined a flag football league, run around like I was back in college again. I was competing in the Gold's Gym 12-week fitness challenge. So like I was already in good shape, but I was really ramping up. I was lean, I was strong. My stamina was like, everything was on top. My movie was out. I had a national commercial that had been airing like gangbusters. I was playing drums in 2 bands, like feeling all the good stuff, physically looking good, feeling good. And then that April, we found a massive tumor inside of my chest. And in May, I got the diagnosis. I had a germ cell tumor, cancerous, inside of my chest, growing at a rapid rate, 14 centimeters long, literally crushing my lung and my heart. And, everything had to change in my life. And talk about like you being on this path. And suddenly it's like, bam, everything stops, everything changes. Had to leave my bands, had to tell my agents to put my acting on hold, had to stop the film projects, had to stop the physical stuff, like really just freeze everything. And that weighed on me more than like, oh, I have cancer, I might die. It's like, no, I don't want to stop doing all the art and stuff in my career. I was like, I don't have time for this. But I had to accept that fate. And, using my practices, my spirituality, the Buddhism, etc., I was able to find a really important path, a philosophy that came to me through chanting, which ended up becoming the words embrace, love, free, which is, that's another story we talked about in a different podcast, and there's more on that. But that's sort of my 3-step method of taking any obstacle and flipping it on its head and seeking the opportunity and the benefit in the obstacle and loving that obstacle, loving the cancer, loving whatever we may face, to find the benefit that could come from it instead of shying away. It's more about leaning into it. And I realized that this, works in so many areas of our lives where an obstacle comes up. Well, what if we, instead of, pulling back and having all this negativity towards it, what if we lean in and welcome it in and embrace that obstacle, shower it with love and say, okay, this is hard. This is a challenge, but how can I face this? How can I overcome this? And how can I find it benefit in my life? And how can I help other people? And that really helps the mindset, the mental mindset too, because a lot of times the depression comes in because we tend to fall, and I say we as in me, guilty as charged, fall into like a victim state, a victimhood mentality. Poor me, woe is me, and it's a very low vibration, and it happens to all of us. But the question is, like, are we going to recognize it? I'm like, oh, like I'm playing the victim right now. Is this really serving me? Is this serving my mental well-being, or can I find a different way to do this? And that's, I think, a really big part about mental health is we start getting depressed, and then everything starts to fuel that depression monster. Then this happens, then this happens, then this, and it's almost like the rainy cloud just follows us around, and we keep, oh, look at me, see, then this happened, and it will, those things will happen even when we reach higher levels of spirituality. Those things will come in and out of nowhere knock us on our butts. But the question is, how soon can we realize that? How soon can we move through that? And how can we accept the situation? Like, we're talking about like our body image, right? I was muscular, 6-pack, athletic playing football, and now I'm living in a hospital room hooked up. I got port coming out of my chest, 3 kinds of chemo, 24 hours a day, weeks at a time, open chest surgery, removed one of my lungs and a bunch of other things, took a
Mhm.
lot of my physical abilities away from me, especially at the time. I look in the mirror, and I'm a shell of the former person I used to be, even though my mindset was keep eating healthy and keep exercising as much as I can all throughout cancer. Because I would walk the halls of the chemo oncology floor with my pole and toe and do laps at least 3 times a day. I had my resistance bands. I'm doing curls, and keeping up my weight, bringing in my own food to the hospital with a fridge in the room. And so being very proactive in my own efforts to stay strong and healthy. But no matter what you do, that cancer and all the stuff that you go through does take its toll. And I looked and I'm like, I was bones. I lost all this muscle, like it was just gone, and bald, hairless. And now a huge scar up and down my chest from the open chest surgery, scars on my side from the heart surgeries, port scar, you didn't even see it on camera here, but port scar on my chest, like all the things. And I'm like, I look in the mirror a couple times. I'm like, who am I looking at? Like that, what is this person looking back at me? I didn't recognize it. And it could be very easy to just be like, oh, this sucks. Like, I'm done. Look at me. Like, it's all over. But I chose not to, even though I got on a scale at my lowest. I was 134 pounds at my lightest after the big surgery. And I'm like, wow, like I've lost almost 30 pounds. I look like this. But even though it was hard to see that, I embraced I embraced the reflection, and I got into the mindset of what can I do? What are
Mhm.
the possibilities? And I can rebuild. And maybe I'm not going to have my right lung is most of it's gone, and my heart wall has been patched up with Gore-Tex, and my biggest vein was pulled out, and the superior vena cava was rebuilt with bovine heart tissue. So I'm a part cow now. It's fine. But it's like, okay, well, I have these things, and they're going to be with me forever. I have some stuff from cancer, that is not going to go away. It's not life threatening. It's just inconvenience. It's side effects. It's just, it is what it is. But again, if I can either fall into the victim of, oh, I don't have my lung, I'm not going to have as much stamina, or I can be like, well, how do I build the lung I still have, to be its strongest? I get up and do Wim Hof breath work. My lungs are powerful. My 1 1/3 lung that I still have is powerful. And I'd put myself up against anybody in my ability to take breaths and to, do breath holds and to be athletic, because I was focused and set on rebuilding. And I didn't want to say I'm going back to Justin or re-getting my old self or, any of these old things. I also didn't agree with the term, this is your new normal. Like doctors are trying to say, well, this is just going to be your new normal. I'm like, fuck you. That's a bunch of bullshit. A
Yeah.
new normal. That I think for me, saying this is your new normal means that you're accepting a less than version of yourself. I'm
Mhm.
saying, no, this is Justin 2.0. It just
Yes.
looks a little different. And there's certain things that I don't have that I did have, but I have a whole lot more in a lot of other areas, especially in my connection to source and spirit, my wisdom, my enlightenment, my ability to take my message and help other humans.
Mhm.
So I gained more than I lost.
Yeah.
And the gratitude practice is so huge throughout all that.
Yeah.
The minute you can just start saying, hey, what can I be grateful for right now? It'll
Yes.
take you out of that victim space real fast. And I
Yes.
think we all can find things to be grateful for in every moment around everything. So
Yes.
it's powerful.
Yeah. It's
It's a little
always.
tangent for you.
Oh, well, I mean, it's just such an amazing journey and story you have to share with the world that's so inspiring, and if you can embrace what's happening, if you can even come to love it, and then you can, go free from all the nonsense that we create around what we say is going on for us, and realize everything is there to help us to connect to that love, to that infinite source, and
Mm-hmm.
that it is all whole, but our mind doesn't want to see it. This could fuck with me, so I'm gonna fuck with it or whatever, like, or I'm gonna play the victim or whatever, and all that stuff. And so it's always so inspiring, and your story, and that you look at like how the sense of, oh, I'm deficient, oh, they say I'm deficient, I can't be, but well, you're rebel. So, I mean, I think for you, it's even a little bit more natural to be, or like, well, screw that, right? So that's good you have that in you. And I don't know that everybody is as natural to that tendency. You know, I don't want to make anybody else be like, well, you couldn't do it. You know, only someone like Justin could have that mindset. But at all, I mean, I feel like anybody could have that mindset if they
Yeah.
choose it, right? So, because I think somebody could say like, well, that's great for you, but that's I don't know how to be like that. Or, you know, people can have come up, you know, they're caught up in their ideas. I was just talking to
Mhm.
somebody else. It wasn't a guy, but it was somebody else. And I was like, well, here's an answer. And the minute I come up with an answer, it sounds perfect, right? Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. And the reason why that won't work is, wow. And then I go for another solution. Yeah, but the reason why that won't work, you know
Mhm.
what? I think the problem here isn't that there isn't solutions, it's that you're
Mhm.
committed to like how it's not going to work.
Mhm.
And I just called that person out on that immediately because I'm like, I could just see there's a pattern. You're
Yeah.
just there, and immediately this person's like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay.
Mhm.
You know, like
Mhm.
able to see it at least, you know, like, okay, I have this pattern where I'm just saying, like, this is the way it is, blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. Because I know, like, sometimes when I've gone that space, yeah, I think probably most people go to this place. It's like, this is a story. It's like, I can't believe this is happening again. Literally, I remember there's this guy that wrote a whole book about that because that's what people say so often. Like, why is this happening to me again? And you know,
Mhm.
it's this always happens. I wish it would just quit happening. And it's like, okay, it's coming to you for a reason, though, right? So
Mhm.
that's where your embrace love free is so powerful. Like,
Mhm.
okay, if you can embrace it, it maybe it doesn't need to come the same way, maybe at least anymore. And if it does come, maybe it's more of a friend now. You can be like, oh, okay, you kind of bug me, but I got to embrace you because I know that's the path. And
Mhm.
but we just you know, it's okay if we go nuts and we're depressed and we've been making all the wrong choices, as long as, you know, like some of the things I've slipped up with in my life, and I'm like, why did I do it? But often what I find is right after that, I'm inspired to make new commitments. I'm like, okay, well, now I'm definitely going to go to another level or whatever with something, you know, like I'm going to totally commit to this or that. And so it can, yeah, I mean, the adversities in our life can do incredible things for our growth and what we're capable of. Absolutely.
Yeah. And one thing that came to mind as you were talking about that is that comparison thing I mentioned earlier. It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
Justin can do that, but you know, like not me. I don't have that. Like people have said to me, like, you know, like the way you went through cancer, man, that was inspiring. I could never do that. It's like, why? Why are you comparing yourself, you know, self to me? Like, what do I have that you don't have? Like, yeah, I'm punk rock and all, you know, so I got that inner rebel. So find your own inner punk rocker, you know. But like it comes to a choice, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like you find out a doctor says you have cancer. Okay, I have two choices. Either I drop into victim and poor me, or I say, okay, I'm going to accept this. What do I do now? What can I do? And it comes down to making a choice. Now we're all going to do it differently. We don't look the same, act the same, are the same. We all come up with different ways and different paths, but we all can make to get on the same road together,
Mm-hmm.
and we can go down that, and that's where the empowering, you know, the empowerment does come. We take some of the responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we talk about why does this happen and this keep happening. That's a very common thing too. And I feel that most of the time, a lesson will keep showing up until you learn it. It
Mm-hmm.
might look different, you know, but that's why I also believe like if you have an illness, it's really important to find some of the more energetic core causes of it. Because if you just address what's on top, you know, physically from the medical perspective, and you don't look emotionally and spiritually what may be underneath it, then that can manifest in another way, you know, in other forms of illness or cancers or things like that. You know, for me, it was about, and this is, you know, another big tie into mental health and men's health is where I found that I lived with a very closed off emotional heart for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
This is very common in a lot of men. You know, there's no, I feel that there's no secret to why so many men die of heart disease. You know, we have closed, broken hearts. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I was, you know, when I talk about going back to like that 11 to 13-year-old range, you know, what I didn't tell you about the story in that I was, you know, physically, you know, not looking my best and receiving a ton of bullying for who I was and what I looked like. But at the very same time, my grandmother was going through ALS, the Lou Gehrig's disease, which to this day still I find to be probably the hardest illness for anyone to face. And I was watching her deteriorate. I was watching my dad fall apart, and my grandfather, my uncle, all the men in my family trying to deal with it, but no one showing any sign of emotion. I didn't see anybody coping with it. I didn't see my dad shed a single tear. I didn't see anybody in a healthy way go through it. I just saw my grandma laying in a hospital bed in their condo down in Chicago, and we'd go visit her, and she had all the tubes hooked up. She couldn't speak, she couldn't move, she could blink her eyes. That was the limit. And I was 11, 12 years old, 13, watching her literally deteriorate into nothing, feeling so sad about it, having no mentorship from the men in my life on how to do it. My dad, and I remember I asked him, and we had a deep talk about this a couple of years ago. I had asked him when I was a little kid, about 12, and I asked him, I go, Dad, why don't you ever cry about grandma? And my dad went through some stuff as a kid too, and like a lot of men, he's turned to me and said, it's not tough to cry. And that was his thing. If you cry, you're not tough. He wasn't telling me I shouldn't. And, he's a loving guy, and he's not an abusive, tough person whatsoever. It was his own story and his own thing. And he just, he didn't want to show tears because he thought that would show his character as not being strong. And I heard those words in a very formidable young age and think, oh, it's not tough to cry. And I was a very sensitive, intuitive young kid, and I used to feel emotions a lot, and tears would come easily to me. And then realizing that if I showed emotion at school amongst the bullies, it led to more bullying. And so between the way I hated feeling around grandma, between my dad and his experience, between seeing what showing emotion and being vulnerable does to you in a school where kids are easily bullying, I said, I'm going to shut this down. I'm turning this off. I don't want to feel. And I shut my heart off. I locked up the key. I threw it away, and I kept myself from feeling and crying. Like I went for over 20 years without shedding a single tear. It was insane. And what I noticed looking back on that is that I feel that all emotions, the whole spectrum of emotions, are kind of like a circle. It's almost like a stretchy bubble. And if you decide that you're going to shrink one emotion, they all shrink with it. So because I was unable to feel grief and sadness, I was unable to really feel the depths and truth of joy and happiness. And I felt that it was all connected to each other. But still maintaining, I got to be tough. I can't show emotion or feel emotion or cry. If I felt like it, I became an expert at stuffing. And I stuffed. My heart center was completely closed off, and energetically speaking, my heart chakra shut down. And then what happens? One day, a tumor literally grows into my heart. So, some people may say, oh, you're full of shit, Justin, with this story. And that's fine. I don't care, because for me, I feel that there's a direct connection there. Even though the tumor may have come regardless, I still feel that there's a direct energetic connection and a big awakening for me to realize that I need to fully emotionally release. Like, I feel like I'm a loving guy, and I love to give love, give, make, shine my light on everybody. But the problem is that I wasn't able to receive. And so there was no purification. There was no circular motion of love and energy going through me. And I was closed down. And then this tumor grows into my heart and says, hello, so it's like, okay, well, now there's a tumor there. I mean, maybe it's time to open the heart. And interestingly enough, after I had my open chest surgery and the tumor came out, and they had to take a whole half of my heart's pericardial sac off and repatch it with Gore-Tex and all this stuff, 3 months later, I had complications. My lung and my heart had fused together, and it created this scenario. We call it a cardiac tamponade, medically speaking. That means it's kind of like a pericarditis as well. So the whole heart sac inflames. The inside of it fills with fluid, the periodic fluid. And basically, my heart was sitting inside of 1 liter of fluid inside of the little heart sac. That's how much fluid had built up. And under that much fluid, your heart can't pump. And my heart started to collapse. This is a widowmaker type of a scenario. I was very fortunate that we found it on the day, and I got to a hospital and went into an emergency surgery to drain my heart, because I was hours away from being dead. And then a week later, my team decided they wanted to go in with another surgery and cut a hole in the bottom of my heart sac to test for more cancer. They thought cancer had spread. It didn't, but they wanted to create a drain so that it would prevent any any future buildup of fluids, so that they would cut a little small circle at the bottom of the heart sac. They call it a pericardial window. And so it's like about a silver dollar, $half size little hole, like a drainage hole. And so now, after this whole year of cancer and having this closed heart, we literally physically cut a hole in my heart sac. It's like, okay, if you're not going to open it yourself, dude, we're doing it for you.
Right.
You know? So
Oh,
there's a lot of awakening. And I feel that, by working on healing this heart center, this is the core. This is where that core lies, in the physical, in the spiritual, and the emotional, is healing this area. And I still have times where I feel that tightness, this wanting to close because it was so ingrained in me. But remember to keep opening, to keep relaxing around my chest, relaxing and opening and loving. If tears start to come, if I'm watching a touching scene in a film or having an experience and tears start to come, allow it. Let it flow. Don't stop it. It's a beautiful gift to be able to feel emotion, So, and I did 2 TEDx talks and told my story with all the scientific stuff, but I brought this element in about the emotional connection, the heart, and all that. Now, both of my talks had been banned, and I never got a real reason from TED why, but I feel that may be one of the areas, is because I brought that element in.
spiritual
And because there was no scientific proof of it, and it was a little woo-woo or whatever. I don't know why, but
yeah, I've heard that about
here or there.
Says they don't want the spiritual woo-woo.
It's like, but this is so important. But the good news is my last talk was in 2021, where all the TED Talks that year were virtual. And so I was asked to produce it myself. I rented a local theater. And since I'm a filmmaker, my wife and I, we brought the cameras in. I did all the editing. I did really nice slides and lighting, and even got a big red circular rug to stand on. So that, even though that talk is not on TED's channel, because I did produce it myself, I was able to release it on my own YouTube channel. So you can look up on YouTube Justin Sandler TEDx, and it'll be the first thing that pops up. And you get a little, general story of my cancer and my philosophy and how it all works. So at least the message gets to share there, right, while I'm busy working on my book and other things, to share it on bigger levels.
Yeah. No, it's that's great. So, wow, yeah, lots to take in there. But I had a laugh. I mean, we can't like just open our heart in the energetic way. We got to do it the manly way. You cut that heart open, baby.
Right. Some power tools, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Don't tell me about like just open it up energetic. Let's get in there really open.
Yeah.
It's how fitting in a way,
Yeah, I know, right?
It's all perfect. I mean, it's all so yeah, so that's great. The open heart and stuff. Yeah, you're right. I mean, guys, it's what I hear again and again on this podcast. Can't cry. Like, that's one of the most common things I hear. Is like, can't cry. You're a guy. You can't cry. I've even said that, at least recently. I played that game too, when I dropped my daughter off at college, freshman year, and I was just there, and it's like I was dreading the moment because I had a feeling I would get emotional. Yeah, I was pretty sure I would, because I am emotional. I'm this person that probably cries every single day. I mean, like, it's like a little, it's not always a big cry, but it's like a little tears in my eyes kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so when I got to that moment, like, it just flooded over me, emotion. Just I can even feel it coming back right now as I'm talking about it a bit. It's such flooding, right? And I'm just like, I did not want to show that to her and her roommate. Like, I just was like, okay, bye. That was it. I mean, I couldn't. I texted her later. I was too emotional. I just could not do it. That's what I keep saying, like, to the girls, at least, like, to some people I talk about, but mostly what I say is, like, they're like, well, yeah, you had that thing happen, when before, where you're about to say when you cried, and I'm like, I was just emotional. It's so strong that even I, who does this podcast, wants to say, no, we don't call it that. We call it I was emotional, because my girls say, like, this is a revelation to them until they were like teenagers or something. Like, I was like, they're like, Dad, we've never seen you cry. We've never seen you cry even once. And I'm like, but I'm very emotional. I cry more than you like on the regular, but you guys just I just don't show it to you guys.
Mm.
And so I thought it interesting, even though I am emotional, that I still hold it back, that I don't want certain people to see that
Mhm.
from me, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy. But I guess it's just this idea that I just look like an emotional wreck if I go
Right.
around crying about things all the time and stuff. So I gotta be stronger than that. And
Yeah.
and I don't, I don't really think it serves. It's something I think I still am working on. It's like,
Mm.
how powerful would it be if I just let myself sob when I feel like sobbing and
Right.
lead the way, in that regard? Like, just let it happen. So, yeah, I encourage myself and everybody, us guys, to take a step forward there. If you're getting emotion, because I saw like one of the other dads dropping something off. I saw his tears start to come in, and I could see it just shut
Yeah.
it down like as fast as possible. And
Stoic.
yeah, he's like, okay, all right, we'll see you.
Yeah.
Like,
All right. Well. Yeah.
right.
A little tap on the back.
And it's like, yeah, use Justin's story as an inspiration. Like, let's not hold it back.
Yeah.
Gotta let it loose. Like, create more safety around it for yourself and get help. Like this metal group I didn't know about. Get into men's groups.
Yeah.
Get help somewhere. We do need support. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea with what you're saying. Like, dealing with these issues, yeah, you can do a certain amount on your own. Totally. It's number square one. But if you want to actually, be able to really break free much, much more, you need everybody needs help. So I just want to put that out there too.
Yeah. I think it's really, especially with men, because women can do it a lot easier. And
Yeah.
as men, a lot of times in our groups with our buddies,
Mm.
we're a lot of times instead of having the deep spiritual, connective, emotional conversations, we're ball busters, right? We're talking surface stuff, sports and chicks and
Right.
bullshit, or we're busting each other's nuts about whatever. And
Right. Right.
that's excuse me, that's fun and all.
Yeah.
But when guys can have really deep conversations and understand that we can be emotional together and support each other, and it doesn't make you any less of a man to do
Mhm.
so, it's really powerful. And having the support, like we mentioned the men's group I'm in, but I'm also like, my wife and I are in a couples community for the last several years, and we do work together as couples, but then we break apart, and the men and the women all have a couple calls a month where we really get heart-centered and really deep with each other to lean on each other for what the heavy stuff we're going through. I've been interested in men's work for a while, before even cancer came around. About a year beforehand, when I was still touring that film I mentioned earlier, I got the idea for a documentary film that I wanted to make, and we've tabled it since. But then my cancer journey really put the exclamation on why it's so important. And I'll tell you about that in a quick second. But like in like the beginning of 2019, I met up with another fella who was also a men's coach, and he and I started together hosting a monthly, we called it Man Dinner. And we'd have it, many of our at my place, but other guys volunteered their spots as well. And we made it a once a month dinner gathering where we'd make it potluck. We'd bring good food too, not shit. And we'd bring good food and get together and have really deep dialogue, and then circle up and do shares and be really there to support each other in whatever way we wanted to show up. And really creating a safe, nurturing space for a guy who's there, who's going through a little bit of something, to be able to openly and emotionally express it, whether that's tears or screaming or, whatever else. Like, it was really huge. And we had to put the group on hold a little bit in the last couple of years since the world turned around. But, I'm looking to bring that back again. But the film idea, which has also kind of developed quite a bit because the last few years, a lot has changed in the world. The name I gave to it is Mantimacy. And that's about really, not the intimacy of two men in a sexual way, but mantimacy as in how men experience intimacy, emotions, and masculinity, and how we show up in our lives. And I know I've seen things go from people who are void of emotion to now where a lot of times there's men being emasculated on a big level. And, a lot of schools are now like having cry rooms and things. And like, okay, so like, where's the healthy balance? Like there is still the healthy masculinity side of it, and where do we find that line of how do we show up as men in our strength and our masculinity, and also be emotional and spiritual beings, and also, be a strong figure for our families, where's I mean, that's a tall order for men to do. I don't have the answers to that. That's why I want to make a doc film that we're going to start shooting soon about, interviewing all these men's coaches and people who can weigh in on how do we go through life? How do we find that healthy? Because we're going to address depression and anxiety in men. We're going to talk about the comparison and the self-worth, how to be masculine, how to, how to show up, how to allow emotions and not shut them down and end up with illness. I have a little bit of an agenda, but I really want to be more on the exploratory with it so that I can learn myself, what the best route is, because we're in a world where a lot of things have changed. People throw around the term toxic masculinity a lot in the last couple of years. I'll be totally honest with you and your audience that I absolutely cannot stand that term. I think it's dangerous, to be honest with you, because I don't think there's anything toxic about masculinity or femininity. They just are. Just like I don't think there's anything, bad about cancer. It's just cells. It's just cells of my body that were lost or went haywire, but they weren't intentionally good or bad or toxic or not. They're just lost and trying to live and survive. And, we just have to deal with them, which is why I was able to find love for cancer. But in masculinity, when we start bringing the word toxic in, like you can say that there's toxic behavior. You can say that, things that are like, in that sort of world, negativity and whatnot, but leave the masculinity and the femininity as they are. And instead, let's just learn how to lean into that. How do we embrace masculinity, and how do we find a healthy balance in our lives? I think the toxicity comes when perhaps a man does completely shut down his emotions and shut down his feelings, and all this stuff is shut, and it starts to well up inside. And then what happens one day, something happens and he fucking snaps and then hurts somebody because he wasn't able to process his emotions and his life and find balance in his wellness, physically, spiritually, and mentally. And then that's when we have violence that starts to occur and other things like that. So I think it's really important to find the healthy balance and to really lean into that masculinity and lean into finding a healthy balance for, yes, I can experience emotion. Excuse me. Yes, I can cry, but maybe I'm not going to fall apart all the time because I still need to be strong. That doesn't mean holding my tears in, but that also means, how do I be the strong father figure, or the strong man in the relationship, and show up and hold that strong masculine energy, but also allow myself to be vulnerable and to be held by the feminine. You don't have to always be so tough and stoic. If you have to share and vent or cry, and you have a partner who's receptive to that, they can hold that space for you, and you can drop in a safe space to do that. So there's so many nuances and intricacies around the experience of masculinity and being a man that we could really break this down and spend hours and days talking about it. But it's a beautiful conversation, and I think it's really important, more than ever, that we talk about finding the great balance in men's health and what it means to be a man, and how we find a healthy and balanced way to see the world as a man and go through life as not just a man, but as a human being having an experience in a man's body.
Yeah, totally. Amen. Yeah, that's good stuff. Really, really incredible. I'm glad you're doing that movie. I know that was something, before COVID. I remember you telling me you were planning on it, or I actually think it was during COVID you told me you were going to be doing this, and so that's cool.
We just have pushed it, get the because of the world being shut down, because of raising money, and because of all the other factors happening in my life, it's been pushed back a little bit. And I'm not gonna it's a doc film, I'm not gonna force it. I've been doing speaking gigs. I have been really busy writing my book, which I finished writing, and I'm now in the editing phase. And I feel like this is really important. And I can very easily, I don't know how other, guys are, but I can easily take on way too many tasks at once. I like to, I'm a juggler of a lot of things, or a polymath, as we will, with lots of jobs and lots of things going on. And I easily fall into that space. But when it comes to the really big project, like a book or a documentary feature film, I think it's important to really hold focus with that. So I'm just waiting for the time to be right. And most likely when the book is, kind of done on my end, and that's a good time for me to step into that world of that documentary film and be able to give it more attention and love that it deserves. All in due time, man.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. We need to kind of wrap a little bit. people that want to reach out and connect with you or learn more from you, etc., where's the best places for them to do that?
The easiest thing to do, and thank you for that. I would really love to hear from guys, whether someone experiencing cancer, or someone they know, or a men just dealing with men's issues, or just want to chat. I'm very receptive. I take phone calls with cancer patients that I never met before and offer some guidance. There's no charge, there's no upsell. I hope to support as much as I can for as long as I can. So you can reach me most easily just at my website, justinsandler.com. There is on the main page, there's a mailing list form that you can fill out. I don't send very many of those, but once in a while when there's something big to share, I'll throw a message out. There's also a contact form on the page where you can, send me a direct message. And then if you like to play in the social media world, I'm on all the major socials, at Justin Sandler on Facebook and Twitter or X now, and Instagram. And if you go on to YouTube or TikTok, it's because my name was taken, it's at Justin, the letter J, Sandler, which is my middle initial. But you can find me on my website. All the links to my socials are on my website, and I'd love to stay in touch. Please reach out. Let me know if I can support you in any way, or just stay in touch, and I'll share when there's books and movies and fun things to share that hopefully will inspire and help, and things that you can spread to other people. But as a goal, I really strive to continue to be a creator and an artist with the goal of entertaining and inspiring, and that's kind of the dedication of my life and my work, and I hope to continue doing that for as long as I can, and sharing it with all of you out there. So thanks for hanging out for this talk and for being part of it, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's great talking with you today, Justin. Amazing as always, and I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all the guys listening in, and for all the women listening in too, as I know probably around half the audience is women tuning in to be educated and more find out how they can help men more as well. So God bless you all for tuning in, and again, I appreciate you. Thanks for everything you shared today.
My honor.
Thank you for listening in to Just Two Conscious Guys Talking, where our mission is to impact millions of men ultimately to deepen their awakening by examining their consciousness of what's been unfolding for them with male stereotypes and programming that has allowed them to have opportunities to evolve during these times. It's an exciting time to bring more love to men and women around the world, and we are grateful for you tuning in today. Feel free to share this episode and keep tuning in, and also look in the show notes for a link to get notifications of future episodes. Until the next time, everyone, goodbye for now.